Right. So I think we're talking about the difficulty of, or the non-difficulty of getting projects made. I thought we'd start with Gerard, who represents...
Thank you.
Well, you represent the establishment on this panel.
Thank you very much.
BBC, so,
but I wore a T-shirt to disguise that fact.
So, from within the BBC, what are you looking for when you're commissioning a project?
God in hell. As I think I explained it in inordinate length to anybody who listened to me this afternoon, there's no such thing as a good idea or as a good project. There's a project needs, the person who's got the project needs to know who on earth do they think is going to buy this? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. What channel's going to buy it? If we've decided on the channel, what slot in that channel, what time of day is your project suitable for? How much is it going to cost to make? How long, if I'm told the production period's a year, am I going to be able to deliver it in? And if all that passes, and the BBC suddenly decides they're going to give you a couple of £1 million, how on earth do they know that you're going to be able to be trusted with that amount of public money? You know, the BBC licence fee being the one remaining poll tax I think we have in the country. And the answer is, there's probably not a cat's chance in hell of that happening. Because if I'm taking a decision to invest in public money in you, I need absolutely to understand that you understand our audience and that you have a track record, a proven track record of being trusted with public money to deliver something that will be watched and hopefully win its slot in a 400 channel universe. Look at the Radio Times. There is very, very, very few slots for kind of independent filmmakers. We're looking for series. We're looking for series that can be sold worldwide. And we make no secret of that. I think the license fee is not a license to broadcast stuff that we think that people should like, even if they don't. I believe it's an obligation to entertain, inform and educate as many people as possible. So I think if you have a project, a film project, it's not my area of expertise, but if you have a project that you want, you need to know exactly where you think this idea of yours should play, and you need to partner up with a proven independent production company with a track record in being able to be trusted with that amount of money and to deliver it. And that is the cold, hard facts. If you want to make a gallery film, if you want to make films that will play in festivals, that's fine, and I love it. It's not my world. I'm in broadcasting because I believe in the broad bit. I believe that if I'm a writer of a song, I want somebody to be whistling it on the tube in the morning. And I'd hope to God that if you have an idea for a film, that you have a passion, not just for you to like it, but for the world to like it. And I still believe that television is one of the most important broadcast mediums that exist. I would ask myself, if I were you, some hard questions about whether I'm sitting on a vanity project, whether I'm sitting on an arts project, no disrespect to that, or whether I'm sitting in something that can have the ability to be played at 9 o'clock at night on BBC One. And I would look, I think I would forget about your website, your Facebook presence. It's easy to make taster tapes. Technology's got to the point where you can, I've looked at the short films, and incredible title sequences, some beautiful gradings that I could only dream of, and very few ideas. But if you believe you've got an idea, and I hope to God you have, and I believe that some of the people I've talked to today clearly have, find a partner with a proven record of being able to deliver for a broadcaster, and I wish you well with that. anything short of that isn't going to work. And that's the sad, cold facts of broadcast television. And you take Hollywood and you just take what I've said and multiply it by 1,000.
But there's been a shift in Hollywood, especially in sort of the mid-budget range of filmmaking, where there are now production companies who are making films under their own steam and then selling them to studios for distribution. Is there any sort of move in television on a similar level, or is it all still commission-based from your point?
No, I mean, I think people are consuming media in radically different ways. They watch it. I mean, I've got kids. I live with Lucy. We've got kids, and they don't watch in linear television in any sense that I understand. But virtually everything, bar stuff that's made maybe for Netflix, has at some point been commissioned by somebody who schedules traditional television. It may be consumed differently. I think the one thing that's happening in Britain, two things. Everyone's looking at Vice.com, which, be careful how you Google search it, you'll end up places you don't want to be. Where short-form filmmaking, documentary filmmaking has been quite radicalised and is well worth looking at. Murdoch's trying to buy it and they're not selling. The other thing that I think is on the horizon that is a real plus, and I'm not speaking for the BBC, nothing I'm saying tonight represents anything the BBC believes in, but the decision to put BBC Three onto the internet, which there was some controversy about, I think maybe a radical opportunity for people to be able to supply content, and I hate to use content like it was cornflakes, but I'm trying to film factual content, where there is no longer a schedule, where there's no longer, it has to be 59 minutes, 29 minutes, 44 minutes. And I think that will be a radical departure. For the first time, a major broadcaster is going to be able to have the freedom to invest in people who don't fit the traditional model of being able to stuck on 1 or 4 or whatever BBC Two is these days, other than Bake Off. So I think, there is no radical movement in the way that you're describing, but I think that the future of BBC Three may represent a real step forward in giving at least some wriggle room for people who are independent filmmakers to make shorter form content without having to be thinking to the BBC Worldwide box set.
So Lisa, as a filmmaker, what has your experience been at the other side of that, of getting your short made and then moving on to a feature?
Well, as a director, luckily you're quite protected from how you fund stuff, because my producer's on charge of all that, and I don't really know how it varies because I've never worked in Britain yet. So in Sweden, the first port of call is to go to the Swedish Film Institute and see if they're interested in giving you some development money for a feature or a short. And then if they do, then you're already paid from the onset for writing. And you just have to then get money from a distributor. I guess it's the similar in England. You need a distributor who's going to distribute your film to the cinemas. You need different film funds, the Nordic Television and Film Fund. You need a channel who are either going to buy the rights to show it or are going to go in as a co-producer. And then you need the top financing from rich people who put money into films. So as a director, what I have to do is go along with my producer and hold my mouth quiet while he discusses what the financial plan is. And then when he says, and now I hand over to Lisa for the creative, and then I sit there and sell with all my might and all my heart and hope that they think that it's a great idea. But I mean, I would add to what you said about knowing who you're going for, who your audience, who is your target, what time will it be shown, who's going to want to watch it. You do need to answer that. If you want money from people, you can't just go, it's a film for everyone, because it's naive. No film is. You need to know it's for 13 to 30-year-olds. You need to have done your research and say, it's a film like this and this that have this kind of audience, and they are going to also like mine. And the same with, even if you're with your producer and you're pitching to a channel, you need to work out which channel actually wants to take the kind of stuff that you've written. I was commissioned by the equivalent of our BBC, SVT, the one that we pay taxes to fund, for a year to develop a TV series because they were so enamoured with Girls, HBO's Girls, that they wanted something for a girls' audience in Swedish. So I spent a year with 2 writers developing a TV series that was about 20-somethings and their complicated lives. After a year, the channel said, absolutely brilliant, they paid us for a year's work. So I was paid for a year to not make a TV series, because at the end of it, they then decided that now we're looking for like what-if stories. We don't want so much girls anymore, we want like Breaking Bad. It needs to have a hook, or it needs to be like, what would we do if half the world was zombies? So they changed their mind, but we were able to take our project for a very small buyout fee and take it to another channel. But it was so written for SVT, the equivalent of the BBC, that taking it to TV4, which is the equivalent of ITV here, a commercial channel, was just wrong from the onset. Really, there was only HBO left, who we just pitched to 2 weeks ago, because if it can't be SVT, BBC, then HBO are more of that type of thing. But going to the equivalent ITV, the experience I had made me physically recoil from the table, because she said to me, we need commercial channels, of course we do, but commercial channels means your beautiful work gets cut into 4 bits with horrible commercials screaming at you in between. And, beggars can't be choosers at this stage. But the woman said, I'm afraid this is really, really beautifully well written, and it's got structure, and it's funny, and it's a drama, but I cannot commission anything that won't be seen by 1.5 million people, and I know that this is too narrow of a comedy. It's too
niche.
Yeah, too niche, too quirky, too HBO. And she looked at me and looked pitiful and said, I'm sorry, our audience is really, you can be surprised by what goes down on our channel, but after a while, if 1.5 million flies eat shit, you have to wonder whether it tastes good. And she said that, and took my beautiful 1-year written script, physically recoiled from the table, and just thought, you know what, I think maybe we are at the wrong channel. So it was just like, kind of know what your channel is looking for. If they're looking for what's crap on telly, Heathrow documentary, if they're looking for that, or
That's my problem.
and you've got something that is like Girls, then maybe you're barking up the wrong tree to begin with to even bother pitching there. So I would just add to you by know your channels, know your audience, know what you're pitching, and don't be naive to say this is something that everyone's going to love, because nothing is. Which is why I'm kind of sad that there's no teenagers in this audience, because you're about to watch like Twilight. You'll probably love it anyway, because I do.
So Rebecca and Peter, you're sort of in the middle of all this, right? You're facilitating between the filmmakers and the commissioners. How does that work? What sort of things are you telling your budding filmmakers?
Well, I mean, our remit's pretty big. So, but to give you a very quick lowdown, so basically a year ago, the BFI network gave Creative England about just over £1 million to spend on new and emerging talent. So in some ways I'm in a luxurious position of having a sense of allowable risk for new talent. But what that means is essentially for new talent we're funding each year 20 filmmakers and their teams outside of London, which is another key point, essentially people in the regions. And it's very much kind of like a year-long process. In terms of genres, we've just shown kind of the top kind of 6 that we produced through that scheme at Encounters last week. And the best thing that I can say about them is that every single one is completely different. We had a horror thriller, we had a sort of Cronenbergian sci-fi type piece, we had a comedy that I can only describe as kind of Benny Hill meets Wes Anderson, which is completely bonkers, but fun. So, it's just a really, really nice mix. And in terms of that, what you want at that level is kind of unique voices that you can bring through new talent into sort of the emerging kind of sphere. And that's the way we kind of break things down. So it's not just about projects, it's about people and what level you're at as filmmakers. So for us on new talent, you could be doing self-funded shorts, you need to have graduated, so you need to be making films, but you could have put stuff up on Vimeo, you could be sort of in a tight-knit little crew and you've got a slate that you're developing already, which is great, but you've not really engaged financially, I suppose, with industry at this point. So that's really what we're trying to do with kind of the new talent guys, and we've just actually opened applications again for iShorts about 3 weeks ago, I think, 2 weeks ago. The deadline for applications is the 24th of October, so if you want to apply for that, I urge you to do so. In terms of what that means, in terms of applications, all of our applications are online. We might have 2 talent centres, one in Brighton, one in Sheffield, but basically wherever you live in England, you apply online centrally in one place. It really couldn't be easier. And from a funder's point of view, one of the things that does my head in is basically, if people are smart and they ask you smart questions, it's great. But if you haven't done any research, it's kind of what you guys were saying about research and development. If you haven't gone to the Creative England website, you haven't looked at the talent centres, you haven't looked at buy-shorts, and you ask me about 50 questions about eligibility, and literally all of those 50 questions and another 100 are answered on the website, it's really boring. Believe me, it's a whole lot more annoying to actually do that work, and then for people to come to us and ask these questions. So if you do that and then ask me a smart question, I will remember you, and I will definitely help you a whole lot more than if you don't do that.
Could you invest in a game show?
Yeah. I mean, listen, that won't make any... yeah, I mean, in terms of the eligibility thing...
creativity and people watching television and stuff. Would you invest in a game show or the X Factor or strictly?
No, I mean, what we do is purely film. Well, I mean, what I do is purely film. So, I mean, our whole kind of remit within the talent centres, the end point is basically to get, whether you're a new talent or an emerging talent, and I'll explain what that is in a minute on the emerging side, is that when you get to the end of that journey, you're making your first feature. So anything over, you've got to be realistic about how much films cost to make. Anything over sort of 1.5 million, is unlikely to be a first feature for anybody.
We'll get to you guys.
Well, yeah, sometimes it can be, but it's an exception to the rule, is what I'm saying. So you need to be realistic about what you can achieve. And on the emerging side, what we're doing is really quite advanced. So we've got an advanced short programme where we put in between £20,000 and £50,000 into shorts. We've then got feature film development capped at £30,000, so that could be for scriptwriter fees, director fees, producer fees, budget, scheduling, casting, recce's, all of that stuff. In terms of what we're looking for, again, sometimes I throw that question back at an audience because, when I watch a film or when I think about what I go and watch at the cinema, and then when I come out, I'm not talking about how great the subplot was or it wasn't that great leap from Act 2 into Act 3. I just talk about films as you would do normally. And, when I'm reading something, I'll invest in it emotionally and I have a really normal human reaction, to a piece of art. So I don't consume the script particularly in a different way to when I'm watching a movie. In terms of what we're doing, just because it's so hard to remember all the different genres, but I wanted to put across, really the diversity of what we're doing. So on the advanced shorts, everything from like social realism to fantasy horror, comedy drama, art house, VFX, heavy kind of urban drama. In terms of stuff we haven't done, but that we're mulling over at the moment, we've got potentially our first black comedy, first sci-fi, first kind of hybrid live-action animation piece, which is good. In terms of features, we've got a character drama, a biopic, action thriller, western, teen, sci-fi family, psychological horror, supernatural, fantasy, sports, comedy, and we're mulling over our first sort of film noir, first documentary, and our first kind of heist film. So that's pretty broad, and I didn't set out to look for those. Those projects were good enough that we wanted to develop. And you kind of, for us, we're buying into the team, I suppose, as much as the project. But I would echo what the other guys said about finding your team early, producer-wise in particular. We've got, on the new talent scheme, I think the people that struggled probably more than others were the people that didn't find their producers really, really early on in the process. And we're having to go out there and, match with producers in the regions, and that's a really, really tough thing to do when you push for time. So that would be like a really big top tip, find your producing partners earlier.
And Rebecca, is your perspective any different?
I think so. I think, to be honest, I probably would class Creative England in a similar camp to Gerard. I think, in a way, you are commissioning work, you as a producer. So I have worked as an independent producer, and I now have a startup to help new filmmakers break into the industry. And I also work for an organisation in Brighton called Wired Sussex, which helps creative digital and IT companies across the sector with lots of advice and events and things like that. That's me. I think, as a producer, I would approach a meeting with Gerard the same as I would approach a meeting with Peter. I think... sorry, go back to what was the question again? I forgot.
I was sort of, as somebody sort of in between the filmmaking side and the commissioning side, you know, what are you looking for? How are you helping to facilitate what goes on?
I mean, in terms of Film Show and Tell, what we do is try and let people know about the opportunities. I think what I found when I was starting in the industry was that I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get in touch with Creative England. From the session we had this morning, I think a lot of people weren't sure how to access Creative England. They didn't even know it existed. So I think my role is to try and let people know what resources are out there, and then also help them to cherry pick who they should be going to and where they should be putting their time and effort. I think as much as the commissioners want you to talk about your audience, as a producer, you want to think about your funder. You want to think, who do you want to fund your film? Do you want to retain all the creative rights, in which case you might want to think about funding it for yourself? You could do crowdfunding, you could look at raising finances yourself. And I think you need to think seriously, long and hard about going to Creative England or the BBC, because as a producer you handle across a lot of your rights, a lot of your autonomy. I've been through the Creative England scheme in its last guise when it was with the UK Film Council, and it was a fantastic experience. But I only got there because I put a whole lot of graft in earlier on, making shorts off my own back. So I think it's just, my role is sort of helping people think about where they're at in terms of their careers, and then finding the right avenues to approach so that you're not wasting people's time, especially your own, because as an emerging filmmaker, your time is spread very thinly across a lot of things, and if you can direct it in the right channels, not only is it the best use of your time, but it stops that horrible feeling of failure that you get when you knock on a door and you find it's still closed because you weren't ready to be there.
I mean, the thing is with the shorts, it's interesting when you said about crowdfunding. You know, we had teams that went out and raised for about $4,000 on Indiegogo, $3,000 on Kickstarter, and you add that to the 5K that we're giving them, then they go and got an angel investor for another 3K or whatever. So actually, what seems like a really tiny short is suddenly about sort of 15, 16K. You know, you're paying the crew. If we're giving a mentor for £1,000, they're giving X amount of expertise in terms of money to you as well. So really, you're looking at ultimately around like a 20K short, for some of these guys in terms of value. So it's not to be sniffed at, and I guess there's probably, in terms of what we're doing now, there's more flexibility, I guess, in how we work with people, but it is about finding the right niche and the right area for you. So I'm sure you're not all at the same experience level in terms of what you've done, what you want to do, and that's kind of the most important thing, of cherry picking, the best piece of advice, or where you need to go to get to the end point for you. And the end point for all of you is going to be completely different. You're not all going to want to do the same thing, make the same type of film.
So Paul and Alex, tell us how you're completely ignoring all of this.
Well, we're completely ignoring that, and nobody would ever commission us, and we're totally bonkers. So we'll get that out of the way first. So we've dealt with that there.
Not break any bones.
We're basically making a $300 million feature film for no money with students in our spare time. So obviously a project that will never get finished. We'll have a lot of fun.
22 years.
We've actually properly scheduled it, or kind of properly scheduled it, for about 22 years development.
At this rate, but
At
it
this
might
rate,
not
at
stay
this
at that
Right.
rate.
We're planning to speed up as technology catches up with us. For those who aren't familiar with the project we're doing, we're making a natural realist film using similar technology to Avatar. I come from a motion picture background, having worked on Lord of the Rings and various other films in feature production, as an animator right at the bottom of the pile, right at the bottom of the tree. And now I'm having a go at directing and writing. And we've got a lot of very enthusiastic students who work on the project. We've set up a visual effects company, structured similar to the company I worked in New Zealand called Weta Digital. And we basically do a 3-year course where students work on this, and they contribute to the film, and then they go and get a fantastically exciting, well-paid job in Soho. And during this process, before they leave us, they tend to leave us just as they get really good, so we maybe have a 6-month window where we can use their amazing skills. During this process, we're contributing to this film we're making. And we've got a surprisingly long way on very little money. We've had very, very generous sponsorship, as it's an education project. And at the moment, we've done all the creative side. We've done our 1.5-year script development. We've done a lot of production design. We've done our principal photography. We've done lots of costume design. We've done all the things that we need to in a fairly luxurious environment of an academic bubble, which is obviously very separate.
We are in a safe bubble.
Yeah, we're in a very safe bubble, and now we're just putting our head above the parapet, having a quick look to see financially, is there any possible potential for getting commercial funding? How does it function? And are we completely nuts? So
I think the general feedback that's come back is we are.
we are nuts,
but we're carrying on regardless.
We are carrying on. We will finish our film.
Paul's kind of
maybe
got the
before
creative
retirement.
vision. Yeah,
Maybe
you've
before
done it.
retirement. I've probably got about 15 years, I
Maybe.
think, before I retire. One could you mentioned vanity projects, you could very easily put this in the vanity project category, but luckily there's so much involvement by students that it becomes a joint vanity project.
I don't understand about vanity project. What does that mean? I'm sure mine was a vanity project
Well,
and it's still got
I don't think you can be a director without being vain.
But does it mean that you love your project and that you want it to get made?
I think tradition means that you love your project, but actually it's completely rubbish, which is a fairly subjective decision.
How can you possibly know that?
Well, you know your thing about flies earlier on.
Oh yeah.
So our particular feature is a very we know our market. Our market's relatively niche. It's effectively film students. One of our pitches was, I think, characters from Gregory's Girl, acting out an Angela Carter short story with the atmosphere of Mulholland Drive, the dream logic of Mulholland Drive, with the atmosphere of Don't Look Now meets Picnic at Hanging Rock.
If anyone gets that, then you're our
It's a giant smorgasbord of stuff. Yeah. You can't get more niche than that. So basically, you have to be alive in the 70s to 80s.
Well, Paul came to me with this bonkers idea of working at the university, and I'm kind of the technical guy. I run a mocap studio at the university, and I kind of just took this on as a massive technical challenge. Like, can we do this with no resources, a free workforce of students under the moniker of education to get the film made? And they bought it. And I've kind of been thrown into the realm of kind of development producer to try and get sponsorship for different aspects of the film. And it's been amazing, based on the calibre of the visual work we've produced. I've cold called many software companies, and we're up to about £500,000 worth of sponsorship at the moment through software and free equipment that we've been given. We've kind of hit that wall now. We need more people and more time, and people and time don't come for free. So now we need to think about any way we can potentially get any funding in. We've looked at our budget. We've realistically scheduled it for 2.5 years at £15 million. But now trying to get that on a first-time director with no famous people attached, with no previous calibre, we realise we are insane. So
Gerard would buy it based on that.
No previous track record, nobody famous attached. It's a dead winner, isn't it?
We're in a lucky situation because we're in education, so we can keep making this thing, but we might get the reputation of the film that never got made. But we can still use it in this educational context of teaching students, giving them a head start. But Paul's got a creative vision. So the dilemma for us now is we've produced something that looks brilliant and everyone's really interested in it, but there is no funding route for us out there. We cannot find one. We don't have one.
We're about to embark on a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
We're doing things
we can do to realistically get some more.
The one thing we did learn,
funding.
we went to Portugal over the summer and pitched to a bunch of film producers. We didn't bat an eyelid at the 12 million to 15 million budget. Because that, for a feature like this, is incredibly small, because obviously Avatar $300 million. Obviously, he's got a bit more of a track record in directing, unfortunately. One thing we did learn was that...
Doesn't make it a better film.
It doesn't. The feature film production obviously comes in dribs and drabs, so if you've got the luxury of time, which we actually do have unless we pass away during our teaching careers, you can fund things with small bits of money and improve the development process. And because our film is technologically dependent, the technology is improving, so the budget can only shrink because the money we need to finish our project basically is based purely on the amount of time it takes to do certain digital processes that make a film like that, and that's getting quicker every week.
Can I just try and work out what you have? So you have a draft feature script?
No, we haven't. The script's finished. We've got most of the music done. We did a 6-week mocap shoot where we've got all the audio, all the performances. We did all the casting, the actors. The only thing we don't have is an edit, which is we're doing next year. We're doing our previous edit, which it's a bit different in computer graphics because we have almost all the storyboards done. We've got over 1,000 frames of storyboards done. We're very talented storyboard artists. But we need to put that all in a digital environment. We need to make our cameras, which we haven't done yet.
And as a director, do you have anything like to show as a a pilot or a teaser or a...
Well, we've got a trailer,
Okay.
which you can watch online, which is an example of our stylistic approach, and it's got it's kind of a good indicator of the film. It won't tell you the story, and that's more to do with the fact that I don't like trailers where I know the whole story when I watch the trailer, because why would I go and see the film? Which obviously is the way you sell a trailer, but the kind of film we're making, we're coming from a very luxury David Lynch approach to filmmaking, is where we want to go. Obviously, we understand our market is small, and that making a feature film...
Well, what was really interesting was CG Brothers is a YouTube channel that deals with kind of technological filmmaking. We're into computer graphics. It's an early channel, and they offered to show our trailer and put it up on their channel, and we've had well over 40,000 hits. And then there was this huge comment stream at the bottom going, what? I don't understand this trailer. It doesn't tell me the whole film in a trailer. And then other people going, but that's what I like about it. It's a completely ambiguous trailer. It made me think about it. Did you read the description at the beginning? There's a description at the beginning. And it's kind of it instantly split that 40,000 people down the middle of all the comments that were being made. So we know there's an audience out there for us.
It's not...
Because some people are really into that way of...
But it's there.
Yeah. And what we're finding difficult now is trying to find that funding route that can support those bonkers way out there kind of different kind of ways of filmmaking or different ideas, and it's difficult.
It's a crazy experiment, but it's getting a lot of students' jobs, so
yeah.
If it fails horribly...
Yeah, we're still doing a good thing.
So Lucy, yours is a different bit of academia to these guys. What do your students go to? I've been on a lot of film sets. I've met a lot of carpenters and electricians. I've never met a theoretician.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, we teach it, and I feel like a complete fraudster on this panel, honestly. I was like trying to think of crawling out from under the table was watching you thinking, what the hell could I ask her? But anyway, yeah, I mean, we teach with film studies, we teach film theory, we teach film history, we do a small element of sort of more practical based work around screenwriting. I mean, yeah, if you get to the age of 17, 18, and you know what you want to do, you know you want to work in the industry, and you know specifically what route you want to take, then you probably wouldn't come and study with us. If you are, Rob is one of my former students, so he should come in here. I'm going to use Rob as an example in a minute, I'll hate you for it. But no, I mean, if you, on the other hand, have a love for film, a real interest for film, but, you know, at that age, how many of us really know what we want to do? It's quite rare. Then, you know, you come and perhaps study film with us. And it's quite interesting listening to you all talk, because I think one of the things that you get from learning about film history is, you know, everything you're talking about. These are patterns that have been going on for years. You know. I mean, the British film industry, the kind of the vagaries of funding for film. You know that, and you know, talking about the money for sort of new talent and so on and so forth. What differentiates us with France, for example, is that the France since the 1950s have had the Avance-sur-Recette, which funds young filmmakers, gives them money to fund the first film, and that's why you've had sort of creativity and a sort of flourishing, if you like, of the French film industry, which we've always struggled with over here. So learning about film history does have its advantages, and it's a good bedrock if you're interested in film. Also, learning about films was watching films, thinking about how films are made. I mean, it's funny, I was talking to one of the short filmmakers briefly before he came in, and he was saying that I wasn't sure that you could learn to write, and I'm not sure you can't learn ideas. If you want to make a film, you need to know what you want to make that film about. And I agree with all the things about you've got to get it to an audience and all of that. All of that's absolutely true. But you also need you need to know what it is you want to do and what you want to say with your film. And I think one of the ways, no one can tell you that, but watching films, all sorts of films from different periods of time, different cultures, different histories and so on, that can inspire you, I think. And I think, I'd like to think that's what we can do by teaching our students film. I think that the other thing that we do, another thing that's come out really loud and clear tonight, you need to do your research. You don't go to Creative England without having read all the small print. You don't go and ask the questions which are already there on the website. Well, I'd like to think, and Rob is a perfect example of this, we do teach our students to do their research, to ask the right questions, to find out the information. Our graduates, for the most part, at the end are, they have got those skills. And I think quite a lot of our students, in fact, do go on to work in the industry. A lot of them, that is what they want to do. We have kind of an alumni panel every year when we get students to come back and talk to our current cohort about what they're doing. And we've got a lot of students who've gone on to do good things in the film and media industries. And I think what we give them is a kind of, I suppose, we use this term transferable skills in academia. Time management, they know how to write, they know how to present well, they know how to work in teams, they know how to do research. But also, they do know about film. They know about film as an art form, what film is, what are the what's its place in culture, and all of that might sound a bit sort of abstract in comparison to the kind of things we're talking about tonight, but I think it is a good sort of bedrock for people who want to go on to work in the industry. But having said that, of course, it's not going to get you a job either at the BBC or elsewhere.
I think it's really, really important because you're planting those seeds of creativity.
Absolutely.
You get people to go out there and think about medium and maybe do something completely different and avant-garde and go against the grain like we are.
Yeah, we have
something completely insane that might just succeed and be the next big thing. You know?
We have students who go through our entire process, realise they hate film and animation, but they've used that 3 years to work out what they don't like, which is a different subject, but I think in terms of academic learning, spending 3 years with that game.
I do worry that the term creativity has been coined to mean essentially minority interest. That stuff that is a success becomes by definition uncreative. And I work in one of the weird industries where it is a badge of honour. I work in television. It's a badge of honour amongst my colleagues to not watch television, because television is for other people. I find that one of the most depressing views that public, not you, I think your project sounds fun, and I love your tongue-in-cheek view, and I think your students get an enormous amount out of it. But the lower your audience, the greater your creativity is an equation that depresses me beyond belief. And I would hope that if we got the Creative England, not your Creative England, but Creative England and Scotland now, sadly, should embrace Motley. I think it's one of the most creative, counterintuitive programmes on television, that somebody thought somewhere we could get people in, over 10 million, to watch people doing ballroom dancing, whether a 70-year-old plus 80-year-old has been. And I think that is sneered upon, that soap writing is sneered upon, that daytime television is sneered upon. There is that do argue with me, it's not like us to argue. That is a very, very worrying signal to send out, that somehow your inability to get funding is a badge of your creativity, that we are too creative for funding. I'd ask you to be very, very careful about equating that.
But there's something really undepressing, and that is that there's such a massive swing towards television.
Exactly.
Film used to be the high culture and TV was lowbrow. Now people don't go to the cinema, they're too busy celebrating True Detective.
You mentioned HBO.
I watch so much television,
coming out of America now. It's television. It's not film. I mean, there is still, of course, but there has. I think that's a bit of a false dichotomy. And I also think the idea that, I mean, yes, there is a sneering, and historically there has been. But I mean, again, if you bringing it back to academic work, I mean, there's a very real interest in television, and the writing of Coronation Street has been acknowledged for a long time. The quality of that writing, I think that's I mean, I take your point to some extent, but. No, I think that's.
But how many people here, honestly, are trying to get a soap off the ground? How many people here are passionate to get a game show off the ground? And the answer is nobody. I know that.
Because they're not in at the moment.
I was going to say today is
They're not
it's a
they're
film
not
festival.
game shows, are
on
they?
TV.
The number one show on television is Coronation Street, followed by EastEnders.
So, but why aren't there more then? If nobody's got them, everyone's more interested in what? Really quality drama, like low-running, character-driven.
When was the last time there was a new soap? What was the last new soap?
Dropping like flies, aren't they?
Last new soap.
El Dorado. That was the last new one.
My point is, there's something fundamentally undemocratic and something fundamentally on the edge of sneery that ignores the fact that the number one shows in this country are soaps. That the water cooler moments are around Strictly and X Factor. That Breaking Bad oh dear God, you know, oh, you haven't got series 4. Oh God, chemistry teacher makes crystal meth. Oh dear God, how, yeah, that's become cool. There is nobody in this room developing a soap. There's no one in this room developing a game show. There's no one in this room who is developing Call the Midwife.
And if someone came to you with a game show, they've got 6 o'clock on a Saturday night or nothing, isn't there? Really?
Oh, there's 2 game shows on BBC One in the afternoon, there's 2 BBC game shows in ITV in the afternoon.
So you're calling
there's 2
for
game
that
shows.
now? Is that what you want?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that the definition of creativity is being
Highbrow.
well, is being attempted to be owned by people, and we're talking about a vanity project. I mean, I think a vanity project, I would love, you got to love your project, but if it is fundamentally not for a mass audience, you've got to ask yourself, who's it for? Is it for you? Is it for me? Is it for my friends? Is it for me to be in my peer group? And it worries me that creativity has been hijacked as a notion. And I think that is...
But hijacked by who? Who are you saying is hijacked?
People who want to win film festivals rather than people who want over $1 million.
For some people, and perhaps there's some of the people in this room, for them that's their passion, to make short films or feature films or whatever it may be. But the idea that it's been broadly hijacked, I completely agree with you. I think there's enormous creativity within popular television. I don't think you cannot, the idea that high culture is more worthy and valuable than popular culture is something I've always, in all my work, has been actively set out to dispute. I don't believe that for a second, and I'm sure...
I agree. We're not sat like a TV broadcast seminar in Edinburgh. If we were, I'd hope that loads of people would, hands would go up, and that's what they'd be doing. Just to be, I guess, slightly more encouraging in terms of talent. In terms of the genres I was talking about earlier, there is a really good mix of people that are writing across lots of different, platforms, be that radio, theatre, TV, and going back and forth. Not kind of saying, I'm going to start in Soapland, but then I'm going to end up in film. Actually, just going between the two quite happily, and that is, I don't think that's frowned upon so much now as it was. And it's nice to be able to find kind of, for us, say like we can get away with having maybe a slightly more established talent in TV or theatre, and getting them to come into film, and then pushing things kind of vice versa if they want to go in that direction. We're doing some stuff with theatre partnerships to try and get that off the ground kind of regionally. So I don't know. I take your point in terms of mass media and stuff. But for us, it's kind of.
Don't you think it's also? You're basically making a very political argument. I think. It's an argument that's gone on for time immemorial. The idea of, in Mozart's day, you've got the popular opera and you've got the more abstract opera. It's almost like, for me, it's like comparing apples and pears. You've got a certain kind of drama that appeals to people who've reached a certain level of, I don't mean this in a snobbish way, but in education. And people who are bored with that thing because they've seen it already and they're going to something else. One's not better than another. They're just different expressions of enjoyment of art.
I do believe the remote control is a pretty democratic device that we should pay more attention to. But I think it's the soaps that have done more to deal with issues of homosexuality, of race. That the radical power of soaps beats anything, I've seen it before. So it's not a political argument for conservatism, it's a political argument for that radicalism and creative radicalism can come in many forms. And some of those forms get overlooked. And soap's been one. I don't particularly watch soaps, but I understand that the power, the history of Coronation Street's portrayal of women. I think in fact the very fact that BBC4 made its own drama about the original writers of Coronation Street gives it, in some ways it's kind of proving your point, but it needed the kind of stamp of approval of BBC4, if you like. But that stamp of approval showed. There is a real recognition of the value of Coronation Street to the development of
of serial drama, and the writers, as you say, I absolutely agree. I mean, most of the the early writers were gay men, and their portrayal of women was groundbreaking at the time, and it's gone on to be through the years.
Absolutely.
So, and it's but I don't think, certainly from an academic perspective, this is something which has been fully acknowledged. And I mean, there's a lot of very, very interesting work, and I also think there's a kind of much more of a slippage now. I think those boundaries between film and television. And all sorts of other forms of visual media as well are so much more fluid. I mean, you look at someone like Stephen McQueen, Oscar-winning director now, he came from a sort of fine art background. Much more possibility for movement between different cultural forms and different sort of, if you like, levels of culture. We've gone, I think, from a time. I think the other thing is when you say, people say they don't like television, people don't tell the truth about what they watch on television. And I have colleagues at work, and you say, oh no, I don't. And you hear them talking, well, they've been watching Strictly along with the best of us, So there's a snobism around it, it's for sure. But I think those kind of hierarchies are breaking down, and so much the better, and so they should.
And there's more and more channels as well.
Absolutely.
You can pick and choose completely HBO Nordic and Netflix, and if you want BBC and all other BBC channels, there's something catering to everyone's tastes these days. So if you want to do a game show, then find a channel that does game shows, and there'll be space for you.
It's also about perceived value.
People don't have a channel anymore. When I was a child, my mother wouldn't let me watch Magpie because it was on the ITV. We were watching Peter, so we quickly slip it over when she was out of the room. I just don't think that doesn't make any sense to people today.
I just want to pipe in and say, one's not better than the other, but what we're definitely finding is the more abstract your idea is, the harder it is to fund.
Yeah. To be fair, the game shows democratically have got the funding. It's the things that aren't the game shows that really have to find a voice because they aren't getting funding. I mean, I just quickly wanted to ask about, you mentioned France being a place that has a culture of developing certain kinds of film. People like David Lynch and Woody Allen having to go to France to get funding to make things they want to do. Out of Hollywood, obviously they're both very successful filmmakers. Is that something you think culturally has happened to film as it's moving into TV? Actual filmmakers are finding it harder to make big budget films and are having to go to Canal Plus and people to kind of get their films.
Well, I mean, obviously, Studio Canal and so on are having an enormously important role, aren't they, in funding films. Yeah, and I think that, there's always been a tradition of, France as being somewhere where there is a certain an openness towards film in a way that seemed to be at odds, with what was happening in Hollywood.
I think it's a risk. They're less risk averse, or culturally they want to take.
Stop asking questions. We need to finish.
Segue. Flawless segueing. I'm waiting for.
Flawless segue. Forgot about that.
The segue.
So on that note, I think we're done. Thank you, guys.